Will cornerback Ahkello Witherspoon be back with the Rams next season? And an impact corner the Rams could trade up for? That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor trying to get a 12K subscribers. So be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button. Also, drop your questions for tomorrow's mailbag episode. We got tons of questions from you, so if you want to be featured on tomorrow's show, drop any Rams-related questions down below in the comment section. My name is Doug McCain. Friends call me DMAC. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. We cover LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 sports, Locked On Rams, SI Dodgers Nation. And today, of course, as always, I'm joined by the people champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. And on today's show, we're talking about the secondary, where the Rams definitely have some positions they need to address. Could they bring back Ahkello Witherspoon? Could they go sign a big free agent, draft a cornerback? We're talking all about that on today's show. But first, this episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Now, Travis, here in our first segment, Les Snead, he spoke to reporters and was asked about Ahkello Witherspoon and Johnson. And Snead said that he has had conversations with them. He expects them to, of course, have some continuing conversations, but that's where it stands with them. So first question we're going to get into today is, should they consider bringing back Ahkello Witherspoon? I think it really depends on who else they have their eyes on and if they can acquire them.
And I think it depends on the price too, right?
Yeah.
It depends on what he's willing to accept and what they're willing to offer. That you'd like to have him, but I think he's one of those guys that you want him at the right price. I don't think that he's somebody that you overpay to keep, right? Like, for instance, if the going rate for Kevin Dotson is a little higher than you're comfortable with, I think you go there anyway. I think that you give him what it takes to bring a player like that back. I think he's that important to what you're doing. I don't know if you'd say the same thing about Witherspoon. He had a nice year for the Rams, but I don't know if you can't find the equivalent of his level of play elsewhere at maybe a better price. Now, there's some value in the continuity, right? In having somebody come back for an additional year and knowing what you're trying to do. But a lot of that may be up in the air to begin with because you have a new DC. Raheem Morris is gone. Chris Shula is in. So the continuity factor is already maybe not exactly where it would be under typical circumstances where the DC is coming back. He did a good job for the Rams. If he were back in a Rams uniform next year, that's great news. But this is one of those, you have to make a decision probably based on economics more than anything else.
Absolutely. And if you look at contract projections for Ahkello, he's looking for a multi-year deal, but it's not something you're going to have to break the bank for. 2 years, $6.5 million, something in that range. I think it just comes down to, you liked him at the veteran minimum price, right? But do you like him for more than that? I mean, it's like, for me, if I see something that's $10, I'm like, nah, I can't get that. If it's $9.99, all right, we can talk about it, right? So I think it really is about the price. And if he likes being a Ram, if he wants to come to some agreement, if there's not other offers out there and the Rams strike out some other targets, I think they do continue to have conversations and keep things warm as sort of a backup plan. But if you look at last season, 3 interceptions, had a PFF coverage grade of 60, a passer rating against him of 80. And it was definitely had some really great moments of highlight interceptions that we saw, but I'm not so sure he's the answer for a Rams team that I think definitely needs a number one lockdown, shutdown cornerback.
There you go, right? That you need somebody, and I understand what I'm about to say. These are not easy to find, and there are not many of them to begin with. But what you're looking for, at least in a perfect world, is somebody to be your next version of Jalen Ramsey, somebody to be the guy that you can take on the field, put him there and say, okay, I don't have to worry about that guy anymore. We can worry about everything else. And like I just said a minute ago, I understand that that's really hard to find. I understand that Jalen Ramsey is probably going to end up in the Hall of Fame when it's all said and done, that he's that good of a player, and you don't just go, okay, I'll take another one of those. But that's at least the ideal of what you're looking for, a difference maker, a playmaker, somebody that you can kind of put by themselves in certain situations and feel comfortable doing it. And I don't think that Witherspoon is that guy. I don't think anybody thinks that Witherspoon is that guy. So, this is one of these, you got to really love it at the price that you're getting it for. Otherwise, I think you go look elsewhere.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, too, new defensive coordinator. And he had success under Raheem Morris, had a career-high 52 tackles. He had 3 picks, 14 pass defense. And someone's going to be 29 in 2024. So cornerbacks, kind of look at the aging curve there. Do you want to kind of go younger and possibly get someone in the draft to kind of take over that role? I mean, you still have some players we're going to talk about a little bit. You got Tomlinson still in the mix. I mean, can those guys emerge? Kobe Durant definitely had a little bit of a step back last season. Darian Kendrick is someone who is a liability for certain stretches last season. But yeah, if you look at Witherspoon, I mean, played 94% of the snaps. So that's definitely something that I feel good about considering the injuries he's dealt with.
Yeah, right. I think the best thing, like you said, he made some really nice interceptions. He made some pop plays that made you go, okay, wow, that was pretty nice. But I think the biggest compliment that you can pay him is that he played every play, right? Would you say 94% of the plays?
Yeah.
That's really, really good. That's somebody that even if you're getting a C+ level performance, B- level performance, at least it's consistent. At least it's there every single day, that you're not in and out of the lineup. You're not injury prone, that you're able to go out there and do it. So that's certainly something in the positive column for Witherspoon, is that, what's the silly cliche, the best ability is availability. He's available every single day.
Health is wealth. No,
right.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, for sure. Like, that's the thing about him is you saw the production. I mean, targeted almost 100 times. He held receivers to a catch rate below 50%, had 10 pass breakups. Those are all solid numbers. And I think just to kind of sum this all up, what he really is, he's an affordable option as a number 2 cornerback for a team out there. Not a number 1. You start to see him decline kind of during stretches throughout the season. And I definitely think that as far as that position goes, when you look at where the Rams are at, they rank 25th in the NFL for their overall secondary production. So I definitely think you need some guys to really change the direction of that unit. So I'm not so sure if Ahkello Witherspoon is the guy. Another guy that Snead talked about real quick is, of course, John Johnson. John Johnson is a little more personal, of course, was a Rams fan favorite. He comes back. He really struggled in Cleveland, didn't have the right role for him. And he's someone that didn't really get going until the middle of the season. Had a little bit of an impact, ended up with a pretty solid role for this team, but I'm not so sure he's going to be the guy either.
No, I think they're in a weird spot at that part of their team, because they're younger guys that they've drafted over the last few years, whether it's Durant, whether it's Kendrick, whether it's Tomlinson, haven't really popped the way that you were hoping to. And then the other group of guys, whether it's a Johnson or a Witherspoon, have been okay, but they're on the wrong side of the age curve. And there isn't that really good young dynamic guy that you're going to have for a while and that you can kind of build around. They're kind of stuck between young and developing and old and established. And I think John Johnson falls into that second category, obviously. Is he a player that is good in your organization, that understands what your culture is all about? Absolutely. I've gotten a chance to talk to him before. He's a really good guy. He's a hard worker, all of this stuff. The question is, does he produce enough to be somebody that you're going to give a roster spot to? And he's another one of those guys that's right on the edge. You'd like to have him, but can you do better? Probably. What's it going to cost you to do better? That's a big part of this. I think these are all guys that you like, and these are all guys that you don't love.
Yeah, and he was solid when he got an opportunity towards the second half of the season. He provides great leadership, but let's also wrap this up with Rams don't pay secondary. They don't pay safeties. Okay. Rams do not like paying safeties. I think John Johnson is going to be the most recent example. But coming up next here on Locked On Rams, who are some cornerbacks the Rams could look to target this offseason? Some free agents, some guys they could draft. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
Locked on Rams is sponsored by BetterHelp. So what would you do if you had an extra hour each and every day, right? What is the thing that makes you really get excited in your day? Is it exercise? Maybe you like to go for a hike, go for a run, go for a walk. Maybe you want to catch up on your sleep, take a nap. Maybe you want to open up a book. Maybe you just want to hang out with your friends a little bit. Obviously, a lot of us spend time wishing we had more time. The question is exactly what for, right? Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do it more often. So if you've been thinking about starting therapy, a great way to do it is BetterHelp. Why not give BetterHelp a try? It is entirely online. It's designed to be convenient. It's designed to be flexible. It's designed to be suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire. You will get matched with a licensed therapist, and you're off and running, right? And if the therapist and you don't really click the way that you're hoping for, you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So learn how to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today, and you'll get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for being Locked On Rams, your first listen every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And also, we got to send that special shout out to our everyday listeners out there watching and listening to every single episode.
Word.
And you can be an everyday listener too. Just got to watch and listen to every show, and you won't miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams. Now, Travis, here in our second segment, we're going to look at some guys that the Rams could consider this offseason if they want to upgrade that cornerback position. We're going to start with Kenny Moore. Now, Kenny Moore is someone that you could be had 2 years, 18, 20 million. You're not talking about crazy breaking the bank here. And last year, 79.3 coverage grade, a 71.5 run defense grade. His sixth season going above 65 in that category. So he has been consistent, also provides veteran leadership. He's a good tackler. He's just 5'9", but he plays fierce and ferocious. He's someone that brings some attitude to the secondary.
So when I'm hearing you talk about this and hearing the numbers that you're talking about and talking about all the intangibles, right? The leadership ability, the toughness, these are all important things for sure. Is this not Ahkello Witherspoon exactly just by a different name, right? The numbers are similar. The experience level is relatively similar. The price points may be a little higher on a player like Moore, but this is where I think it gets very challenging if you're Les Snead. This is where it gets very challenging if you're Chris Shula and Sean McVay and how you want to go about doing these things. That what exactly is the difference between player A and player B? What does this person bring that the other person does not, and vice versa, and making that call? Because sometimes these things can boil down to, small, like culturally, does he fit into what we want to do as an organization? Is he a good teammate? Is he a little bit more of an iconoclast? Whatever that may be, this is where these guys really make their bones. It's really easy to say, give me an Aaron Donald, give me a Cooper Kupp and a Matthew Stafford. But when it comes down to two players who are pretty darn similar, which guy do you scratch that check to? It's a challenge. And like you're talking about with Moore, sure, that's interesting, but is it a lot different than Ahkello Witherspoon? Would you rather stay with the guy that's been in your building? That's where the challenge lies.
Yeah, I think for Moore, as far as his playmaking ability and what he brings, I would definitely put him a couple of notches above Ahkello, kind of on his best day. I mean, if you saw his games against the Panthers, he had 2 pick sixes in one game, just a 28th player in NFL history with 2 picks in a game. But I also think the price is higher too, right? So you kind of get what you pay for type of situation. And I think it comes down to, look, can you get Kevin Dotson back? If you don't get Kevin Dotson back, then you have some money to spend on other positions. But do you spend that money on a position that isn't the offensive line? Because this team is not going to be able to have success unless you have the continuity and the strength of the offensive line like we saw last season. What we can do, Travis, we can't go back to 2022.
No, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it's incredibly important that what these players may earn on the market may not be what the Rams have available to spend, because this is not the place that they're going to go to first, right? This is a salary cap league. You have a finite amount of money to spend, and I agree with you. The place that you spend money first is on the offensive line. The place that you spend money second is on the offensive line. This is the thing that's going to keep your team running. This team is going to be led by their offense. This team is going to be led by their potentially Hall of Fame quarterback and a wide receiving core that has two very big name guys, a running back in Kyron Williams, who's continuing to develop and looks really good along the way. If the offensive line isn't good, then what are we talking about? So how much of that money that's available to you goes to Kevin Dotson? How much does that leave, and which of these guys can you afford? This decision may be made simply by the economics of it rather than I like this player more than that player. It's I have X amount to spend, and this is the only player that I'm able to get.
Yeah, really what it boils down to is those three positions: guard, cornerback, edge rusher. They're going to have to spend on one of those three positions, if not more, if they want to make a serious run at the Super Bowl next season. I think that has to be the plan when you consider having potentially over $40 million in cap space. Is also possible trades you can make. And then the other option, too, when it comes to addressing the cornerback spot, is you could draft a guy. You could draft him with your first overall pick, and they have the 19th pick. And this is the first time in a long time they're going to have access to that talent level. And if you want to go the cornerback route, we've talked about this name a couple times on the show, it's Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama. Now, to get Kool-Aid or any of these other guys, Quinyon Mitchell, Terrion Arnold, some of these top shelf cornerbacks, Cooper DeJean, you're probably going to have to trade up. They're probably not going to fall to 19. But I do think that if you are adamant on addressing that need through the draft, it would be worth a day 2 selection potentially to move up to get one of those guys.
Well, yeah, I think so too. And again, this comes back to your player evaluations, which the Rams have done a really good job with. The rub of it is they tend to hit more later in the draft than they do early in the draft. So if you're going to move up to get somebody like McKinstry, you better be pretty darn sure that he's going to hit. Now, nothing's 100%, right? The Rams have been much more, on the good side than they have the bad side. But the very last thing you would like to do is give up that second day pick, move up in the draft. And then all of a sudden you have a guy that's, not what you're looking for, that maybe isn't even a starter, that might not be a depth piece, that doesn't develop into the player that you're hoping that it is. With McKinstry specifically, look, I love the Alabama guys. Give me all the Alabama guys. Nick Saban is about as good at what he does as anybody else. He gets these guys ready for the NFL. They come into the NFL, and the vast majority of them play really well right out of the gates. And if you can play for Nick Saban, you could probably play for anybody. I think it's a fascinating choice. If they could get him, I think Rams fans would. And that's one of the things, too, D-Mac, that would get people excited, right? It's a name that people know because, A, it's kind of a cool name, and B, he played on a team that people, even that casually watch college football, would run into pretty regularly. And I think that would really get people excited to see a name like that come to L.A.
He's definitely the type of Kool-Aid that Rams fans would 100% drink. There's no doubt about that. And I could make jokes like that on the show for the rest of time. But for me, we share the same philosophy, Travis, when it comes to the draft, right? Take the best prospect with the best upside and don't be beholden to a particular position, whether it be edge or cornerback. It could be a wide receiver, right? It could be, it's a prospect, right? You're trying to get the guy that has the biggest upside. But in this case, I think he checks both of those boxes where he's someone that's 6'1". He's fast. He has great ball skills. He has the potential to be an impact number 1 cornerback. Not a lot of guys meet those physical attributes. So I think that he accomplishes both those things. And that's why he's a name that I definitely want to see the Rams 100% consider for sure.
Yeah, I mean, look, you and I are on the same page, like you just mentioned. I would love for them to have their big board, and as the guys that they like get picked ahead of them, just kind of erase them off that board, and who's next. And when it comes down to 19, if they have a guy that's the top-rated player that they like, take that guy. If they have a guy at 19, they're like, this felt like more like a second-round guy for us, trade the pick away and move back and do something different. If you can find somebody that is the best guy on your board and it's a position that you need, I mean, you can't get that ticket into Roger Goodell fast enough. When those things line up, they line up perfectly, you jump on it. But, like we've talked about a lot, the everydayers will certainly recognize this. For the first time in a long time, the Rams have flexibility. So if they don't love where they are, or let's say you get down to picks 12, 13, 14, and a player like McKinstry is still available, well, to move up 4 or 5 spots isn't going to cost you, a fortune the way it would be to move up, a round, or to move up from 19 to 4 or something like that. It's a much more manageable trade, situation where maybe, like you're talking about, maybe it's a 3rd round pick that goes back the other way, a late 2nd round pick, whatever it is. And, you can do these things for the first time in a long time if you're Les Snead.
Yeah, if any of these top tier 1st round grade cornerbacks drop to them at 19, I think you take them. But I think if you like one of them enough that's still available, you try to make something happen. And I like me some cornerbacks that are 6'1", 195, that has those physical attributes. But look, I'd love to have my franchise left tackle for sure. But Alaric Jackson, showing he can get the job done. He's showing he can be competent. The key there is to re-sign Dotson so it opens it up so you can explore the possibility of either signing a veteran cornerback or drafting one. I think that makes the most sense. Absolutely. Or you can flip that pick for a cornerback that's available. So this Rams team is going to explore all their options. But coming up next, Rams got some very, very low grades on some very important categories. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Rams.
Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers, you get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So you make a $5 bet, that bet hits, your bet wins, that's $150 for you to continue to play. Maybe you saw the Lakers last night and you're thinking, all right, all of a sudden they get a little bit of a run. They get a chance to beat the Clippers. They're getting some points along. There's a whole bunch of things going on right now. All of your favorite NBA players, all of your favorite NBA teams, and you can do it with quick bets. You can do it with live same-game parlays. You can find exclusive props at FanDuel and, of course, a whole lot more. But you got to go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn to shoot your shot. Don't forget, new customers, $150 in bonus bets when your $5 bet wins. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Now, Travis, here in our 3rd segment, the Rams, they had their player report cards from the NFLPA. Those were released yesterday. And, of course, this is where the players, they give grades for facilities and things like that. And there were certain grades that they did not get good. I mean, the treatment of families, D+, nutrition, D, weight room, C, training room, D+, locker room, D, strength staff, A+, training staff, A+. So my takeaway on this is, yes, SoFi Stadium is the best stadium on the planet, but we're talking about Cal Lutheran, and they're still awaiting their shiny new facility in Woodland Hills.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is exactly related to what you just said. This is a team that is still in a bit of a transitional mode to try to find their forever home, to use the parlance of the makeover shows, right? They are in temporary housing at the moment. And for NFL players to be at a place like Cal Lu, that is not what a lot of other places do. They're going to find a spot, they're going to build a spot, and I would expect that those grades that maybe the players aren't crazy about will go through the roof, because here's what you know for sure, that when it comes to facilities that the Rams have laid their hands on, that Stan Kroenke has put his hands on, they knock it out of the park. I was just at the YouTube Theater the other night. I've been into SoFi dozens of times along the way. When they decide they're going to go, they go big and they go awesome. And I expect that that'll ultimately, be the same with their practice facilities, weight room facilities, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the other thing I'll say about that, that poll that the NFLPA put together. One of the teams that was second to last, 31 out of 32, the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Here's the thing. If your quarterback and your head coach are right, all of this other stuff is window dressing. I'm not saying it's not important to treat the families well. It is. But what I'm telling you, it doesn't necessarily affect winning. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, that works. They're 31st in this poll. So there's not just a grain of salt in this. There's a lot of stuff. The quarterback and the coach are right. Everything else is more, I don't like the color of those drapes in the building. I can deal with that.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, what is that about? I mean, do they want more nachos? Do they want a better parking space? They want some more merch? I'm pretty sure Kelly Stafford's not happy about something. But, yeah, I mean, you just never know what it is about. I mean, it's definitely not about nutrition for SoFi Stadium. There's an In-N-Out on Century Boulevard, super close. I mean, I don't think that's a big issue. But it just makes you wonder. And you bring up the Kansas City Chiefs. Well, how about the Chargers? They actually got worse grades for treatment of families. They got D-, F for weight room, and F- for training room. So that's pretty interesting as well.
It is. And you look towards the top of that list, it's Jacksonville, and there's some other teams that are not, contending teams. They're teams that are not teams. Oh, okay, they've got it all figured out. The team that was number one are the Miami Dolphins. Okay, cool. Are they good? Not really, right? Because the coach and the quarterback are good, not great. Maybe a little bit less than that at the quarterback position. That this is stuff about players and their the little things, right? Like when my family showed up, their tickets always right on time. And I'm not trying to just bat it aside, but this has very little to do with whether or not the product on the field is going to be something that the fans love. If the quarterback is good, if the coach is good, everything else takes it. Does a fan care if the player doesn't have the perfect setup when his family travels on the road? Not so much. I've never gotten the sense that these are the sort of things that are driving players away from teams and to other teams. Players follow money. Players follow playing time. Those are the two things they follow. And if those two things are there, they're going to come to your team.
Yeah, you just stole the words right out of my mouth. As long as it doesn't impact any free agent signings or any player acquisition scenarios, then I don't really care. And if I'm one of those family members, I'm saying, look, all I care about is those game checks. You can throw me in the broom closet, okay? As long as those game checks are clear, I'm totally fine. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. You can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. Until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.